Mount Everest has been climbed more than 12,000 times. There are traffic jams below the summit, ladders bolted to the rock, and a queue of tents that looks like a festival. K2 has fallen. So has every other 8,000-meter giant on the planet. By now, you could be forgiven for thinking that humans have stood on every high point Earth has to offer. They have not. In the Eastern Himalayas, there is a mountain 7.5 kilometers tall, taller than anything in the Americas, Africa, or Europe. And no human being has ever stood on its summit. Not once. And here is the part almost nobody expects. It is not because climbers cannot reach the top. Modern alpinists almost certainly could. It is because one of the smallest countries on Earth looked at the most ambitious sport in the world and said one word: no. And it has never changed its mind. The mountain is called Gangkhar Puensum, the White Peak of the Three Spiritual Brothers. It rises 7,570 meters on the northern edge of Bhutan, a Buddhist kingdom of fewer than 800,000 people, squeezed between India and China. Bhutan is not an ordinary country. It measures success in gross national happiness. Instead of money, it did not allow television until 1999. And it limits tourism to protect its culture. For most of history, its high peaks were simply ignored by the outside world. Then, in the 1980s, Bhutan briefly cracked the door open for mountaineers. What happened next is one of the strangest chapters in climbing history. Because when the world's best alpinists came for Gangkhar Puensum, the mountain made them look like beginners. 4 expeditions tried between 1985 and 86. Teams from Japan, Britain, and Austria with serious funding and serious climbers. Every single one failed, and the first failure sounds like a joke. The maps of Bhutan were so poor that one expedition could not find the mountain at all. They marched for days toward where Gangkhar Puensum was supposed to be and ended up climbing a neighboring peak by mistake. The teams that did find it were beaten back by brutal weather, unstable snow, and routes nobody had ever studied. There were no guidebooks, no photographs of the faces, no fixed ropes from previous attempts. This was mountaineering the way it looked a century ago, completely blind. By the end of 1986, the highest summit of Bhutan remained exactly as it had always been, untouched. Then Bhutan closed the door, and the reason had nothing to do with sport. In Bhutanese belief, the high peaks are not trophies. They are the homes of protective deities and the spirits of the land. Gangkhar Puensum itself is considered sacred, a place where gods reside, and villagers in the valleys below believe that disturbing the summit brings misfortune, floods, and failed harvests to everyone living in its shadow. Climbing it is not bravery in this view. It is trespassing in a temple. In 1994, the kingdom banned all climbing on peaks above 6,000 meters out of respect for these beliefs. In 2003, it went further and outlawed mountaineering entirely. It remains the only country on Earth to do so. From that moment, the highest unclimbed mountain in the world was locked, not by ice or avalanches, but by law. Climbers did not give up easily. In 1998, a Japanese team found a loophole. The northern side of the mountain touches territory controlled by China, so they obtained a permit from Beijing to climb Gangkhar Puensum from Tibet, bypassing Bhutan entirely. When Bhutan found out, it protested furiously, and the permit was withdrawn before the team ever touched the main peak. A year later, the same climbers were allowed to attempt a connected summit on the Tibetan side, a subsidiary peak on the mountain's northern ridge. They reached it, and from that ridge, they could see the true summit of Gangkhar Puensum rising ahead of them, close enough to study every slope. They photographed it, turned around, and went home. That is the closest any human has ever come. Could it actually be climbed? Almost every expert says yes. At 7,570 meters, Gangkhar Puensum is lower than Everest, and modern climbers have conquered far more technical peaks. But do not mistake lower for easy. The mountain has never been properly explored, its faces have never been mapped from the ground, and its weather systems, fed by the collision of monsoon air and Himalayan ice, are violent and unpredictable. Any future expedition would start from zero, the way pioneers did 100 years ago. That is exactly what makes this mountain so valuable to climbers and so tempting. Somewhere on Earth, there is still a 7.5-kilometer summit with no footprints, no ropes, No frozen garbage and no queue. A genuine blank space on the map of human achievement. Bhutan shows no sign of changing the law. If anything, the kingdom has doubled down on protecting what it considers sacred. And as long as the ban stands, Gangkhar Puensum may simply never be climbed. Ever. In a century where we have mapped the ocean floor, photographed black holes, and sent helicopters to Mars, one mountain remains beyond the reach of the most determined species on the planet, held back by nothing more than a small kingdom's faith. Maybe that is a loss for human achievement. Or maybe it is the most impressive summit record of all, a mountain that defeated humanity without a single avalanche, simply by being respected. So tell me where you stand. Should Gangkhar Puensum stay sealed forever, or does the last great summit deserve one legendary first ascent? The comments are open. Choose your side.